Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are talking with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, who's given us great insights and leans on Major League Baseball pitching assignments all baseball season long. And right now we're looking at the card from Thursday, August 6th. And Joe Duffy, another CC Sabathia start. I think we've talked about 75% of Sabathia's starts this year. From the beginning of the year, I've said that I think we're going to want to fade CC Sabathia, and he has pretty much delivered. Although the Yankees, have won 3 out of his last 4 starts. Here he's going to be at home against Boston with Rodriguez on the other side. This is a tricky one. The Yankees were actually the 3rd most profitable team in July in all of baseball, plus 25% ROI, and Boston was the 3rd worst team in July in terms of ROI. They were minus 18%, so the team trends obviously favor the Yankees here. And Rodriguez on the other side, he's one of these youngsters who's been very up and down, and he can be good, but he's been struggling recently. He has struggled with control in his last start, then 3 starts ago, got absolutely crushed on the road at the Angels, and the Yankees have been doing very well against left-handed starters. So I don't know, maybe this is not a place where we want to go against Sabathia. What do you think, Joe?
Possibly, but keep in mind that Rodriguez, he's had a lot more good outings. He's allowed 3 runs or fewer in 9 of his 12 starts this year. He hasn't been super impressive, but I think it is time to concede that maybe those Boston bats weren't quite as good as we thought, and that Boston, they are what the record says they are, that the Red Sox are not really a very good team. But, as we said, Sabathia, he's a big pitcher. He's pitching in the heat of summer. I know he had some dehydration problems against Texas, so this might be one of those where I say take a look to see what the temperature and the humidity is, because I do think that Sabathia could be much more affected. He's a big guy. He's not all that young, and I think he'll be affected by that hot and humid weather as much as anyone. So take a look at the weather report there. Usually wind direction is the first thing I look at, but in the case of Sabathia, maybe the temperature and the humidity.
And then let's talk about the Dodgers and Philadelphia. Again, in our Tuesday and Wednesday segments of this call, I suggested that even though Philadelphia was the best team in baseball in terms of ROI in July, that I kind of like the Dodgers. And I think maybe in this game, I'm liking them the least out of all of the 3 games, but there's no way you can argue against them having a massive starting pitching advantage here, right? Zach Greinke against David Buchanan. Buchanan's interesting, though. He's been a bit better since coming up from the minors, and he also had decent minor league results as well when he was down there. So, as great as Greinke, is likely to be here, I'm not sure that I'd want to bite on this big favorite line for the Dodgers. What's your take on this matchup, Joe?
In the case of Buchanan, he is pitching a little bit better as of late. Some of these things we do record a little bit in advance, so I'm going to keep a close eye. Are the Phillies still red hot? It's not like the Phillies at home are all of a sudden drawing the crowds that they were a few years ago, so it would be an overstatement to say it's kind of a playoff atmosphere. But they get a bunch of young players, and when a bunch of young players are winning, maybe it is almost like a playoff mentality. This is as close as they're going to come for now, and especially going up against such a stud pitcher. But Zach Greinke on the road at Philadelphia, you better be darn sure before you bet him.
All right, and then we have another interesting matchup. Michael Wacha and Lorenzen in Cincinnati and St. Louis. Lorenzen probably gets hit. He's been vulnerable. He's going to be at home against the St. Louis lineup. And Wacha has been pretty vulnerable as well. His last start was excellent, but before that, he was getting hit here on the road in a day game at Cincinnati. I'm thinking maybe he might be vulnerable again. Maybe we look to it over here. What do you think?
He did. He turned it around. Wacha had gotten off to the great start and had gotten roughed up and finally had a good outing. Lorenzen, he has been struggling mightily as of late. 8.61 ERA in 5 starts, his last 5 starts. I think that would make me a little bit nervous going against him. As I said, these young pitchers can be somewhat erratic, and they tend to be a little bit better at home than on the road. So might be a dangerous spot, but the way Wacha's been pitching, other than his last outing as of late, it'd be tough to lay anything on the road. Probably a pass, at least based on the pitchers. There's no real pitching edge here.
All right, and then Aaron Brooks and Dallas Keuchel will be the starters for Houston at Oakland. And Brooks is one of these guys who he did okay in the minors. He's not one of these guys who gets a lot of hype because he doesn't, miss a lot of bats, but he actually gets serviceable results, wherever he pitches. And his last start was good. Was at home against Cleveland, 7 innings, 1 earned run. I'm thinking that maybe long term this guy won't be be a top of the rotation starter, but I'm thinking maybe he has another good start here against the Houston lineup in Oakland, and then we know Keuchel on the other side, always good for an awesome start. I'm thinking we maybe lean under here in Houston, Oakland. I don't think this is going to be a 6.5. I think we should see a solid 7, maybe even 7.5. I guess more likely 7 though.
Yeah, and Brooks, as you said, I mean, he does short term have the hot hand. He is pitching at home, so you can probably expect him to have a pretty good start. And as we said, Keuchel really over the last 2 years has been very rock solid. I know I had a little bit of I don't even know if anyone commented on it. I realized after we got off that I somehow still had Houston in the National League, but that really wasn't relevant to the handicapping. I was talking about a Cy Young race. But anyway, Keuchel is a stud starter, to say the least. So I can agree that this might be a good spot for and under.
All right, and then the last game I want to ask you about is Arizona at Washington. Now, Arizona's a team that's actually, kind of been winning a little bit, generally been a good bet as an underdog very recently. They have Hellickson going against Joe Ross. Hellickson got pounded at his last start at Houston. Before that, he had strung together 4 good starts, though. But before that, he had been a lot shakier. And this guy, Joe Ross, on the other side, seems good. He gets a lot of strikeouts. He seems more consistent and a notch better than Hellickson. Washington will be a pretty decent-sized favorite here. Nothing in the stratosphere, though. What's your take on this game? If Hellickson gets crushed again, which is entirely possible, then Houston should have value even as a favorite, right?
Yeah, I would say in the case of Hellickson, he is coming off a rough start, and he's hitting the road against a very good team. Ross, these young pitchers, as I said, I like them a little bit more at home than on the road. Of course, most pitchers pitch much better at home, but these young pitchers tend to have even more of a home-road dichotomy. So Washington probably will be a pretty good bet here because you're not talking about, one of the aces of the staff, so you should get a pretty decent number.
Yeah, I would be leaning Washington as well, but as far as the bet's concerned, I'm definitely going to wait to see what the line is. As of right now, my 2 strongest leans, I think, are going to be over in St. Louis, Cincinnati. We should see a low total in that one with Waka starting. And I'm leaning under in Houston and Oakland. Those are my 2 strong leans for Thursday, August 6th. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. Is there anything else you'd like to point out to us?
The only other notes that I didn't really cover, Mark Burley, we talked about it before. He's just as steady as they come. He continues to pitch very well, so you at least have to have a check mark next to him, possibly going with him. He's held the opposition to 3 earned runs or fewer in 11 consecutive outings, very quietly as steady and as consistent of a pitcher over the years as you're going to get, and he's in a very nice groove long term, and he seems to be sneaking a little bit under the radar.
All right, Joe Duffy, thanks for all your thoughts and advice. Joe Duffy's final premium picks, of course, can be found every day at his website, OffshoreInsiders.com. Thanks so much, Joe.